Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our last session of the day. And today we have Carrie George, is the program coordinator of Kent State University Wick Poetry Center. And before we move on with Carrie, and welcome, Carrie, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. And we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is traditional territory of many nations, including Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples are now the home to many diverse First Nations, including the Inuit and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And now I pass you to Carrie, and welcome, Carrie.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm coming from Akron, Ohio, in the US, and I'm excited to talk today about healing through poetry. So I have some slides to share. I'll go ahead and share my screen to talk about some of this. All right, hopefully it's all good. I got a thumbs up, great. So I work at the Wick Poetry Center at Kent State University. And the Wick Poetry Center is a very special place. It's a university poetry center, so it's affiliated with Kent State University, but it has a lot of its own programming. So it brings visiting writers, it has scholarships for students, students studying poetry, and it works a lot in the community teaching poetry in different settings. And we've been doing this since 1984. We have a long history of teaching poetry in a lot of different settings, which is really special. And it's becoming more and more popular across lots of nonprofits, lots of organizations, because people are starting to realize that poetry enables us to heal and to share in a lot of ways that people are really looking for right now. So we do a lot of community outreach in a lot of different settings. Basically, we'll go into a place, sometimes it's a classroom where the students are already studying poetry, like an English classroom. And sometimes it's not a classroom. Sometimes it's a veterans group or a mental health group at a hospital. I have a list on the next slide of a couple of places we've been to. And the goal there is to just provide some community with the people there, the members of the particular group, and to show them that poetry isn't this pretentious, inaccessible thing that they might have been taught in different places. If they were taught, difficult to understand poetry in high school, we want to show people that poetry is something that anybody can access and anybody can just pick up and start writing and can use to help themselves and their community around them. So this is a list of some of the places we've been. Coleman Professional Health Services is a mental health care group at a local hospital. IBH Addiction Recovery Center is a rehab facility. We've taught in veterans groups, veterans healing from their time. Kent Public Schools, which is a local school system. More Than a Body student group, which is a group of women predominantly healing from sexual assault. The Dan Street Juvenile Detention Center and Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We're very lucky to have a national park very close to us. So we do a lot of programming with the students there, with kids there, and with people living around the area relating to eco poetry and nature poetry. And that's just a selection of where we've been. We've been to a lot of other places, but this sort of shows the reach that poetry can have. You can really bring it to a lot of different settings. And you can use it to work through a lot of different things, being healing or talking about nature or talking about climate. Really, you can adapt it to a lot of different things about learning and getting to know more about a specific subject. This is from one of the Wick Poetry Center's recent projects. And it's kind of what I was talking about earlier, but the quote is, "Growing evidence suggests that poetry writing positively impacts brain health and mental well-being," which I think a lot of people are starting to see. And I'll take us through sort of an example lesson that I'd like for everybody to be able to participate in, but it'll also show you how you can adapt these tools and poetry in general to your own spaces and your own personal lives as well. So what we do at the Wick Poetry Center is something called the Wick Method. And it's derived from a lot of different teachings, a lot of different teaching artists, scholars, and poets who have tried to put together a sort of template for bringing poetry into different spaces, because not everybody has the same foundational tools for studying poetry, for writing poetry, or for reading poetry. So this method strives to level that playing field. It doesn't matter what background you have. We will come in, we will introduce the poem and the lesson in such a way that anybody can pick it up, anybody can respond to it. And it's kind of a judgment-free zone. We aren't trying to figure out the meaning of the poem or analyze the poem. We're just trying to come to it with our own background, our own experiences, and all come together as a community, all reading and responding to one poem. So the steps that we typically use, and I will, as I said, run through a sample lesson that explains some of these in depth, but it's pretty simple. First, you start by introducing the idea. So if you're doing healing poetry, you'll start with maybe a question or a pre-write about healing or something that will lead into the poem. Then you read the poem, maybe once, maybe twice, so everybody can hear it and really absorb it. Then we do something called charging the air, which is when everybody gets a chance to talk about the poem together. Because a lot of times we have fear of reading a poem. Sometimes hearing the word poem strikes fear into some of our students and some of our participants. So charging the air is a chance for everybody to get their ideas out. And when one person gets an idea out, then another person gets another idea, and there starts to be this static in the air, which is why we call it charging the air, when everybody starts to get the idea, to start thinking through things that they didn't see in the initial read of the poem. And then after we've done that, after we've discussed everything and sort of made sense of the poem at hand, that's when we go on to individual writing, which is really important because it gives everybody a chance to think about their own experiences, not be swayed by what other people are saying, and to try their own hand at writing and responding, whether it's in a typical traditional poem format, or whether it's just something more like expressive writing, free writing, or journaling. We call it poetry, and we bring poetry poems to each lesson, but we really just want people to write, because that ultimately is the method for healing, is the method for getting your thoughts out. Whether it's in a certain form or not, it doesn't matter, as long as you've put your pen to the page and written something. And then after we do the individual writing, it's really important for us to share so that we can further that sense of community, that everybody wrote something to be proud of, because just writing is something to be proud of, especially if you've never done it before. It takes a lot of bravery to do that. So I will go through now a little sample lesson that I hope everybody can participate in. And I'll kind of talk through a little bit of it too, like explaining what the steps are and explaining why we do them. But you'll all have a chance to respond to the poem that I've brought today, and maybe to share some lines in the chat as well. So the idea that I'm going to bring to us today, I'll talk about a little bit, but when we experience traumatic events as children, we sometimes don't have the language to discuss it. And sometimes we conflate it with more fantastical images or different details, not the strict language of what happened, but some other language or some other idea that we might imagine or create. And this kind of helps us escape or find our own structures for support and our own coping mechanisms. But then as we grow up, sometimes our imagination fades and we have to find different coping mechanisms, or we find that our old coping mechanisms no longer work for us. So one question that I want to just start by asking everybody, and you can just think about this for a moment, is who or what watched over you as a child? And then who or what watched over you as you grew up? It might be the same. It might be the same person or thing that watched over you as a child through growing up, but for some people it might differ a little bit. If I were in a classroom with you all right now, we would take a few moments. Everybody would write a list silently on their own. And if you want to jot down some notes now while I'm talking, you can, but this is more of a webinar, so I will continue in a moment. But this is an important part for everybody to brainstorm and free write, get their ideas on the page, and start thinking about things in their own experience, in terms of their own experience, rather than in terms of we're about to read a poem. It's just a good sense of grounding everybody in the lesson. So you can feel free to continue thinking about that as I pull up the poem. I'm going to stop my share for a moment. I will add the link to the poem in the chat. So if it's easier for you to pull it up, you can, if you want to look at it on your own, or if you want to see it later as well. And then I will also share the poem, share the screen, and go through it. Okay, can everyone see the poem? Great. So this is called Childhood Elegy by Joseph O. Legaspi. And I'm going to read it twice, just so we can all hear it and really have a moment to think about it and observe the lines and the moments throughout. Childhood Elegy. If our angels hover above us, they will see a darkening cornfield, the spectral traces of lightning bugs, and two brothers lying among the stalks. We come because sometimes it is hard to live. The corn stalks limp under the tropical sun, revive in the cool of twilight. The angels will know we have been here for hours. They will land and rest their feathers around us and whisper soothing names of winged things: finch, monarch, whippoorwill, ptarmigan, Daedalus, Icarus, Gabriel. The angels will bend down and touch their faces onto ours and borrow our eyes. Earlier, a horse slipped, breaking its leg. A boy stood beside his younger brother. Their father came into the stable carrying a gun. Quails fitted out of a bamboo tree. The boy traced the trail that had led him here, the field tilled by the dead horse, where his brother laid down, dust on his cheeks. So I will read the poem one more time. If there were moments that were confusing to you or moments that stood out to you, you might take a minute when I'm reading those lines to listen a little bit more, or to note those spots where you were confused, and then we'll talk about it a little bit too. Childhood Elegy. If our angels hover above us, they will see a darkening cornfield, the spectral traces of lightning bugs and two brothers lying among the stalks. We come because sometimes it is hard to live. The corn stalks limp under the tropical sun, revive in the cool of twilight. The angels will know we have been here for hours. They will land and rest their feathers around us and whisper soothing names of winged things: finch, monarch, whippoorwill, ptarmigan, Daedalus, Icarus, Gabriel. The angels will bend down and touch their faces onto ours and borrow our eyes. Earlier, a horse slipped, breaking its leg. A boy stood beside his younger brother. Their father came into the stable carrying a gun. Quails flitted out of a bamboo tree. The boy traced the trail that had led him here, the field tilled by the dead horse, where his brother laid down, dust on his cheeks. So I would like to ask if anybody has any lines or moments that stood out to them in the poem, you're welcome to add them to the chat. Or if you have any questions or confusions about the poem. This is kind of that charge the air portion of the lesson where, again, if we were in a classroom together, it would be a little bit easier. But this is where it's important to kind of discuss the poem, to note if there are any confusing spots for anybody, to note which lines stood out, what we observe, what we might take with us. So if anybody has those, you're welcome to put them in the chat. If not, I'll go through some of the questions that I would ask in a classroom setting, and talk a little bit about what the poem means to me, which will be like the equivalent of charging the air for this setting. So I did put the link in the chat. I'm going to stop share for right now to pull up my slides again, but feel free to refer to those. Oh, let me just make sure it's working. Don't be scared to put things in the chat. I promise it'll be okay. All right, are we back? Slides are back. Okay, if I see anything in the chat, I will respond to it. Oh, I see one thing. This is a very touching poem. I can feel the pain inside the poem. Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of pain happening here. And there are a few moments where the pain stands up. Their father came into the stable carrying a gun. So there's obviously violence and loss happening in the poem, which is made even sadder by the fact that the title is Childhood Elegy. So it's the title frames the poem as something that happens in the speaker's childhood. So any type of loss or violence is very tragic, but when it happens to someone very young, it's even harder to cope with or to understand or to come to terms with. So I think that's what makes it painful and extremely touching as well. Some lines and moments that stand out to me are all of the moments with the angels, the idea of what an angel is in this moment and what the angel is doing to help the boy, is doing to stand in solidarity with the boy and to be with the boy, which is sometimes the most helpful thing we can do for people who have witnessed a violence or experienced a violence. Jessica says, the dust on the cheek tells me the boy does not cry in seeing the suffering of the horse. Like this is not new for the boys. That's a great observation. So the cheek isn't wet, it's dry with dust, which you're right, it shows that there's not tears. It's maybe a normal thing. And some of the other lines too, we come because sometimes it is hard to live. It almost implies that they're returning to this place in the cornfields, because sometimes it is hard to live, not just one time, but sometimes it's a recurring feeling for the two brothers. But they've found ways to come together as brothers and to find other things, the winged things, the feathers, the corn stalks that surround them and give them a little bit of peace. If you have other observations and everything, please continue to enter them in the chat. Feeling of yearning and a vacuum, that's a great observation. One thing that I would talk about is the title, Childhood Elegy. Some people might not know what an elegy is. This is one of your traditional poetry terms, so it's important to discuss that kind of thing. If you are organizing this and you don't have a lot of knowledge of poetry, you can easily look up those kinds of terms. But an elegy is typically a poem written when something has been lost. So it's a poem written in mourning or sometimes in celebration of a lost thing. So childhood elegy implies that some part of childhood or all of childhood has been lost, and the poet is mourning that or moving past that. So that kind of frames the poem, what else is lost in the poem and how childhood has been lost. Another thing that we would talk about is who or what looks after the boy. So he starts the poem with, "Our angels hover above us." And there might be some questions of, what are the angels? Who are the angels in this poem? And we talked about that a little bit. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. You might have some of your own ideas, which you can certainly throw into the chat. But if we look through, there's the literal angels who are coming down, looking after him. And then there's also these other images, the corn stalks, which I picture kind of enveloping the boys. They're their own type of angel. The winged things, the birds, the butterflies flying around, whatever else exists in that space in nature might be a kind of angel or a kind of thing looking after the speaker and the brother. And there might be some other things as well that you might pick up on. And then we might talk about how the angels look after him. The maybe confusing part of this poem is the last moment where it switches to the italics, the part that says, "The angels will bend down and touch their faces onto ours and borrow our eyes." And at this point, after that, the perspective switches. So at first we're talking about, what are the boys doing? They're lying in the cornfield. And then the angels come down and they touch the boys' faces with their faces and they borrow their eyes. And then we get the image of the horse in the stable and the father coming in with the gun. And so that moment is when the angels see what the boys see. They see through the eyes of the boy, which I see as this moment of solidarity, or this moment of listening or being with the boys in their suffering or in their tragedy and their loss. Which, as people who have lost, or as people who've been through something, I think we can probably agree that just having someone be with us, stand in solidarity with us and listen to us and validate us is one of the best things you can do to help someone heal. So whoever these angels are, just in their ability to come down and be with the boys and see this is a really powerful way of standing with someone and helping them heal. And then you might also wonder in this poem, how do they fail to look after him? What are the angels incapable of doing? Because as powerful as it is to come and stand with someone and be in solidarity with someone, the angels couldn't keep it from happening. The angels couldn't keep the horse from dying or the boys from seeing the horse die. So that might be a question that you have in this poem. What are the shortcomings of the angels? And you might also wonder, we might have this conversation, how would the speaker define angels? And you might have your own definition of that as well, which would be great for you to bring into your own writing. I'm sure there are a lot of other thoughts or questions about the poem. Are there any general confusions that you would like, that I didn't address, that you might think need addressing? And you can ask me some questions later as well. I'll add in another aspect of charging the air that we sometimes do, especially with our younger kids that we work with, which you might, if you were interested in bringing this to your own setting. Sometimes we write a poem together as a group. So we might start with a prompt, and I would just take suggestions from the students, and we'd write it on a board, or I'd write it on some paper and then share it out with everybody. And that's a good way to show people that it's a good way of not staring at a blank page and trying on your own to like conquer that blank page, but showing that it's sort of easy to just shout out an image or shout out a sentence or shout out an idea and come together and have that become a poem. So that's a fun strategy that we sometimes do in the classroom setting as well. And then after we do that, after we charge the air, talk through the poem, we move on to individual writing. And I always try to bring a prompt of some sort to help people get thinking and again, to get over that fear of the blank page. So part of what makes this poem so interesting to me is that it uses a different perspective to describe a difficult thing to talk about. So when the angels come down and see what the boys saw, that's the speaker's writing the poem from the perspective of the angels rather than the perspective of the boys. And this can be helpful when we're talking about things that we need a little bit of distance from. Maybe there's something that we've tried to write for a really long time, but just haven't been able to do it. Sometimes employing a different perspective can help us kind of crack the code and write it a little bit more clear or a little bit closer to the truth of what happened. So you might consider that when I ask you to write in a moment. Another thing that's important when we are doing our own writing is to use really specific details. So to talk specifically about the type of bird, the finch, and then the monarch, the butterfly, the corn stalks, not just plants, it's a specific type of plant. So using those really specific details helps create a more vivid picture of what's going on for your reader and also for yourself for tapping into those memories or trying to tell a specific story. So those are two things to keep in mind in your writing. But then the prompt that I'm going to give you, consider these as like stems for your own sentences. You might write a poem using all of these stems. You might start with one, just repeating throughout. You might start with one and then move on, discover a story or another line that you'd like to explore. So just use these as jumping off points for your own writing. But you might consider starting your poem with, "My angels are blank," and listing some of your angels, who they are, what they are, how they've changed throughout your life. You might also use, "My angels saw," or "My angels knew," or "My angels told." So what did they say? What did they see? What did they know that you didn't know? Or what did they know that you did know? You might also ask the question, where were my angels when? And that's the idea of the failure of the angels. What were they not able to do? Which can be sad, but it might also be an important question for us to ask in certain times, to think about that, to think about maybe their shortcomings or the things that you had to go through on your own. And you might also want to write about gratitude. So you can say, "I thank my angels for," and you can list whatever it is that you want to thank them for. And for this, you might go back to that beginning idea that I introduced of who or what were our angels when we were children, and who or what are our angels as we grew up. So angel can be a very loose term. It can be whatever you're thinking about in response to this poem. So this is how I would introduce it. Oh, there's a great thing in the chat. "My understanding of angels is that the angel may represent a good person who can assist. The gatehouse is an excellent example. It is a safe environment for children, and the people who work here represent the children's voice." That's a great understanding of angels. And I think that a lot of us will feel that way when we start to write, that our angels are a very concrete, specific thing, maybe a person who's been with us for a long time. And I encourage you to go forth with that idea, because that's a really great idea. But this would be the time, and I'm going to invite all of you to write now, to make this interactive, but this is the time where we'll take about 10 or 15 minutes to write on our own. So I will leave this slide up so you can see the prompts, and I'll enter the link to the poem again in the chat in case you want to go back to the poem. But just remember what we talked about earlier. The most important thing is writing something down, not getting in your head about what you think a poem is or what it should be, just writing in response to the poem and the discussion and the ideas at hand. And if you have any questions, I will be monitoring the chat, but I'm going to be quiet so everybody can concentrate. So please throw your questions in the chat. Take 10 to 15 minutes to respond to the prompts on the screen. take another 2 minutes or so to wrap up what you're working on. Please remember that this was just a very short amount of time for writing, and I encourage you to come back to this later if you feel you have more to say. It's very hard to write a complete piece in a short amount of time, but think of this as a beginning. So another 2 minutes to kind of wrap up what you're working on right now. Okay, thank you all for writing for a little bit. I hope you discovered something in your writing. The next part of the WIC lesson is to share. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really helpful to share just to see that we've all kind of been through this experience together and we've all come out of it with our own interpretations and our own responses to the work. So in a traditional classroom setting, I would encourage everybody to use their voices to share, but in this setting, I'll ask that if you want to share a line or a piece of your work or the whole thing, if you would enter it in the chat if you feel comfortable, and I will read it out loud. I know it can be a little bit vulnerable to share and not everybody feels comfortable, especially when the topic is a little bit more vulnerable. But if anybody is willing to share even just a sentence or a line, I would be happy to read it. So I'll give everyone a moment if you want to put something in the chat. Otherwise, I'll move on and share some resources, but I'll just take a minute to see if anybody puts anything in there. So Maria wrote, "My angels are my realization that the past is gone and my future is clear." Thank you, Maria. And one thing that we do is we snap. I'm the only one snapping, but when we share our work, we want to celebrate everybody for doing that because it takes a lot of bravery. So thank you, Maria, snaps. And then Maria, another Maria. "My true self hides in the shadows no more." Thank you. Thank you. There's some similarities between those two responses, and that's why it's really fun to share, to see that sometimes we're all really thinking and going through the same things. So it adds a little bit of community in our space, which is really lovely. I will skip ahead to some resources, but if you're still typing something in the box or you need a little push to share something, you can take your time, and I'll definitely come back and read anything else that shows up in the chat. Please don't be too shy about sharing. I really like to hear what people write, but no pressure. So I just wanted to offer these resources if you were interested in trying your hand at organizing a community poetry session. You might like screenshot this, or I can probably copy and paste and put the links in the chat really quickly. But the Traveling Stanzas link, the first one on there, is the WIC Poetry Center list of all of their different projects. So they do a lot of projects related to different things. They have some around nature poetry and climate justice, some around racial justice, some about health and healing, just a lot of different things and projects going on there. So if there's something that you're interested in writing a poem about or teaching a lesson about, you might find that there are some lessons already there on travelingstanzas.com. Healingstanzas.com is WIC Poetry Center's specifically mental health project, which I thought might be appropriate for all of us in here. It's just about healing from emotional traumas or difficulties. Teach This Poem is a resource that the Academy of American Poets curates, and they have contemporary poems, older poems from all different types of poets, and lesson plans that go with them. So if you're kind of new to it, but you want to give it a try, they have them spelled out pretty clearly for everybody. And the Poetry Foundation is Academy of American Poets, and poets.org also has a large resource of poems and poets. Poetry Foundation does as well. Lots of free resources there. So those are some options. If you're interested in like, what I'm interested in poetry, now what? These are some things you might explore. And that's all that I have. I saw another response in the chat that I will read from Jessica. My angels live outside. They blow in the trees. They live in the sunlight. They help me remember I belong here. Thank you, Jessica. I love the action of them blowing in the trees and living in the sunlight. That's very beautiful. So we have a few minutes left. That's my email if you want to reach out to me about anything, if you have any questions about this. cgeorg21@kent.edu. And then I will stop sharing. Are there any questions? I would love to answer questions from anyone before we wrap up.
I have one, Carrie. I'm wondering if you can share some tips on how to get past the word poem, like when people, the initial fear that you talked about.
Yeah, that's a great question. One simple way to do it is to not say poem at all. Because we are the WIC Poetry Center, whenever we enter a space, people are already thinking about poetry. So we just go ahead and call it a poem. But something that we tell people that we are giving these tools to is that you can just call it an expressive writing workshop, or just expressive writing. So you'll probably still bring a poem to share with everybody, but you can just say like, we're going to read this piece, or we're just going to read, this thing that someone wrote, and then we're going to respond to it. And you'll sometimes find in the writing that what they create is kind of a poem, even if they don't call it a poem. And like I said earlier, we really just want people to write, whether it's in stanzas or whether it rhymes or whether it doesn't. But yeah, that part can get a little bit stressful for some people. So expressive writing is a great alternative to use.
Don't see any questions or other comments in the chat or online on social media. Thank you so much, Carrie, on behalf of the Gatehouse for joining us again this year. Wonderful presentation, really appreciated. Got a poem written. as a result of. So thank you very much. On behalf of myself and Stuart and everyone here today, have a safe and wonderful rest of your evening. We'll be in contact soon, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.